if you're good, we'll get started. Okay. The title is, it's really how to achieve a proper life balance. For everyone that's listening and watching now, obviously times are busier than they usually are these days, especially more than ever. And the world's going a million miles an hour, and we're always juggling things. And we know that if it's mismanaged, it can lead to bad mental health and then bad physical health and challenges in life. And Dr. Jeff Gardere, who's super, I'm super excited to have him on here, is the perfect person to talk about this, because you are a sought after expert in mental health. You're a professor, you're an author, a father, a husband, all over television. So you have got a life that's crazier than even most people. So if I could just
and loving it.
And loving it. If I could just grab a few questions with you, then
sure.
That's awesome.
Great. Hello, everybody. Yes.
First of all, what should people be paying attention to when attempting to find balance in their everyday life, from health to career and relationship, family, and so many other factors competing for your attention? How does one, and from your experience also, prioritize and maintain that healthy balance?
Well, so it's going to be interesting. I think, and I'm going to give a real world answer here, not so much a psychological answer. If you find that there are people in your life who are starting to complain that they don't see enough of you, whether it's at home, whether it's with your children or with your partner, or that you're not getting, a certain amount of work done, or you're not hitting your deadlines. In other words, you're finding yourself putting in a lot of work, maybe in a couple of arenas of your life, but you're not able to find that balance. And that balance includes not just the work life, but also the home life.
Yes.
And that is work in itself too. So if you're starting to feel hear the complaints and feel the heat from people, it means that maybe you're not hitting every area in the way that you should.
And that's when you should take a step back and assess it. So,
and reassess what you're doing, because you may feel that because you're going a million miles an hour and that adrenaline really feels great and that you're accomplishing all these things. Well, you might be accomplishing a lot of things, but you may be leaving, havoc in your wake. And it really does mean, just as you said, you have to step back, reassess, and perhaps think of a better way to do it. And that's when we talk about this whole idea of not working harder, but working smarter.
Right. Which is a great segue. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is, and I don't know if you're able to do it or not, but
yes, I'm able to do it.
Okay, and that's the ends.
Well, I hope I'm able to do it, but we'll find out.
How do you find time, and is it important to have alone time to yourself? So you talked about reassessing it, and one of the things I struggle with, and I imagine with your schedule, it's the same thing. Just to have a little time by yourself when you're not at work, when you're not with the family, and sort of recharge. What are your thoughts on that, and are you able to?
Yeah, I think that's something that's very, very important, because we do need alone time. When did we first have that alone time? When we were coming out of the womb, or coming from mom's belly. There was that 8-month, 9-month period for most people where it was that alone time. And I think we kind of need that. It's almost like a rebirthing, if you will, where you have that time to be able to reprocess, to reassess, to be part of that psychological womb where it's warm, it's safe, and it's a place to find quiet. And so I tell a lot of folks, I advise a lot of my patients, whether that's at night when you're sitting in front of your altar and saying a prayer, whether it's meditation or yoga, whether you're doing that perhaps in the morning, whether it's your jogging, or lifting weights by yourself, or perhaps even having that, cup of Java and sitting with your New York Times, which is fake news. No, just kidding. It's real news, folks. I love the New York Times. But, even if it's doing just that by yourself, quiet in the morning.
Even a commute, right? Even a commute.
Even a commute. And sometimes when I drive, and I try not to drive, though I love to drive, but I try not to drive. I won't even put on jazz, and I love jazz. I won't put on any music. It's just the sounds that are around me. and just getting back into my own head and really, you know, concentrating on breathing and clearing your mind. That's why meditation, yoga, prayer, some of those things are really so important in centering yourself so that when you go out there, you're not like a top that's just spinning out of control, but one that's spinning, you know, with the just, you know, the right centripetal forces.
Centrifugal,
yeah. Or is
right.
it centrifugal? Centripetal
Yeah,
with the right force that you're
right.
spinning around. Yes.
Now, I had one question from someone that's watching. Asked, why do you think so many people are afraid of being alone?
Well, and I know this is going to sound, you know, like something that you've heard so many times before. I think that we sometimes are afraid to be by ourselves because it's really a realization of who we are and what we may be going through. And so that's where a lot of that anxiety comes up, right? Because we're afraid of acknowledging what may be happening in our lives. And that's why we're better off just, if nothing else, dealing with the reality of what it is, starting to be comfortable with that. And even though there may be a lot of challenges, notice I didn't say problems, challenges in our lives, that we should begin to embrace those particular things, because that's what life is all about. Being able to solve one crisis, one situation, one challenge at a time, and gear up for the next one. Listen, as long as we're on the other side of the dirt, okay, we're okay. Let's deal with what life has to throw us.
I love it. Which is the question I always get asked about stress, and whether it's you're dwelling on the past too much or you're already worrying about the future before it happened. But it's being present is pretty important.
Yeah, it is being present. And let's be honest about this. I mean, there are many times that we do, you know, dwell in the past, and we are crying over the spilled milk, and that you know, we wish we had done things better, or that we had held on to something, or we're, you know, very distraught over a relationship that's come to an end, or we're so worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, the next month, the next year, how we're going to live up to that challenge. And it's really amazing that you really brought this up, because, you know, I have a major presentation I have to do tomorrow. And I found myself kind of like, you know, being a little bit OCD. Okay, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to do that? And I decided, you know what? Let me just be prepared.
Yeah.
Let me just, you know, go over what I need to go over, do some of that tomorrow morning before the presentation, and just go in there and deal with it instead of worrying about it. I'm just going to stay in today, stay centered, stay with what the tasks are today, look forward to dinner at home, having that glass of wine, and then when tomorrow comes, deal with it. I like that. That should be a new book. When tomorrow comes,
deal with it. Yeah.
Deal with it.
What about, so you're, you know, I think we've become a bit friendly, which is awesome. So I have a little bit of insight into your family life and your home life, and I think everyone's super supportive, which is great. But not everyone always has that, or
yeah,
sometimes people get surrounded not with toxic people in that they're meaning to be negative, but they add stress. Mm-hmm. So what do you do if you're in a situation where either at work or at home, when you find yourself around people that are raising your stress level, and you can't run away from them?
Yeah, you certainly can't. I like to run towards them. Real story. I was just right before I got here, and thank God I got here on time, seeing a patient, and then one of my colleagues who I'm having some issues with, I saw her in the hallway. She was smiling. I was smiling, and I was smiling and thinking to myself, I'm so pissed with you. But her smile did melt my heart. And I decided to go in and visit and say hello. And this is a person who at times can be a little toxic to the relationship that we have.
Sure.
And I think the way that we take away that toxicity is by really embracing that person as not being a problem person, but as being an extraordinary person. There's something about that person that kind of makes you crazy, that kind of pisses you off, but they're a human being, and it's their own, you know, kind of crazy going on, and you're crazy mixed in, that makes for that toxic mix. So if nothing else, recognize where you may perhaps take things a little bit too hard, a little bit too literal, a little bit too personal, and just embrace that person for being very different. And trust me, that person is very, very different. If you're watching, you know who you are. They're very different. But, you know, they have such, you know, and let me say this, that person who is a real challenge for me, and as I was really thinking about that person and how much they were really upsetting me over a particular thing, I also started to remember when I was in a jam, when that person came through and really helped me out with something. Right. So, you know, life is rarely black and white. Right. It really is much more complex.
Wow, that's pretty
so
insightful.
The relationship.
Yeah, I think the other thing you said that was pretty insightful is, remember, even if that person is giving you stress, it takes two to produce that stress. So
that's right.
It's your chemistry.
That's right.
And recognize that.
Yes.
No, that's great. Kind of a little off-center question. Someone asked about balance from a sleep perspective. Mm-hmm. How much is the right amount of sleep for someone that works hard and has exercise and has family? And the thought is something has to give, but is there a proper? How's your advice on that?
Well, my advice follows what's been written out there scientifically, and it's really important. Depending on your age, to get anywhere from 6 at a minimum to no more than maybe 8 hours sleep. Any more than 8 hours, then you know you're going to be in a stupor, pretty much. And it's important to get that regular amount of sleep. The goal is to wake up refreshed as much as you can, even if it takes you a little bit of Java or exercise or tea or whatever it takes. You want to, and your body will tell you after a while if you're getting regular cycles of sleep when it's ready to get up. I go to bed around 10 o'clock every night. Some days my body wakes me up at 5 a.m. And some days it wakes me up at 6 a.m. And that's all I need. And I know that's all I need. If I stay in bed any longer, that's more of a luxury, which really I don't have.
You also have a very young daughter, I think that contributes to some of those early.
I have a very young daughter. I have a very young son, and I utilize different things to, also help me sleep. You'll be hearing more about that. Certain products that I use. I use a Philip Stein sleep bracelet. I sleep with that, and that really helps me with regard to bringing in, the sort of frequencies that ground me to the earth. But more on that later.
Yeah. Wonderful. This has been great. The last question I had, and I think you've been answering throughout, so maybe it's a little bit repetitive, but there's people, Dr. Jeff, that they all have it together. They have an amazing family, amazing social life, a great job. They're super healthy. Not a thing seems to bother them. I hate every single person like this, but I have a feeling you're sort of like this person. But there are habits that they have in general, and you've touched on some of them. If you just, in just a minute, because I know that we're kind of at the end, but what are some of the habits of those people that you're like, how are they doing it?
Regularity.
Okay.
Regularity when they go to the bathroom, by the way, to do number one, but especially number two, because it's important to get those, toxins out. And that comes from a good diet. So it's important that you have a healthy eating plan. It's important that you get exercise daily, whether you're in the gym, whether you're doing, push-ups on the floor at home and your sit-ups, whether it's taking the stairs as often as possible, whether it's jogging or riding a bicycle. Stay physically active. That's really important. But you also need to stay mentally active. Crossword puzzles, teaching, reading, talking to other people. And I think part of that, that triangle is also the spirituality. It doesn't necessarily mean a faith in God, which I happen to have, but a faith in your fellow man and woman, of course, as far as looking and finding the best in others, and that we're all connected, women, men, the plants, the animals, we're all part of the ecosystem, I should say. And it's just important that we realize that chain should not be broken. And the last thing I think that really shows where people are successful and are happier and doing well. And they all have problems. Lord knows I have my fair share of problems. I have a lot of problems, okay? But the most important thing is love and being kind to everyone around you, even your enemies, being kind to your enemies too. I really do believe that we must make America kind again.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it at that. Dr. Jeff, awesome as always. We're going to be having some more with Dr. Jeff for sure on Zubia, so look out for it. But thanks for all your time.
Looking forward to seeing you all. And I'm getting so many comments about people catching us on Zubia. So Zubia is the place to be, folks. Make sure you check it out. A lot of great stuff happening there.
Thank you, Dr. Jeff. Thanks.